Good afternoon, everybody, and my apologies for a moment's worth of tardiness here. Uh, the life of back-to-back meetings at times, but I really appreciate those joining us today. I'm excited to talk a little bit about, kind of the next version of the Office of vCIO. This is a theme that we've talked about quite a bit throughout the year, so really excited to, share kind of some different approach models you can take to building out your advisory and really engagement process with your customers. As always, for those that might not know me on the call, my name's Brian Doyle. I'm one of the co-founders here at vCIO Toolbox, and we hold these open coaching sessions every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And, we open these up to any questions you have. The way the process works, if you're new to this, is we'll go over a topic. Sometimes it's system-based, sometimes it's process or concept-based. And then we will open up the floor for an Ask Me Anything question and answer session. That said, please feel free to be interactive during the meetings. I get lonely over here. Feel free to ask any questions as you go through things. I'm opening up the chat right now, so certainly if you have anything you want to say or just say hello, love to hear from you. But realistically, what I'd love to do is take you through the topic today, and then of course I answer any questions that you may have. So today's session is really going to focus on building out what we call the Office of vCIO. As many of you know, vCIO has become one of those terms out in the industry that gets thrown around and used in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's being utilized to describe the individual that's doing the work. Sometimes it's being utilized to describe the process that's being done to do QBRs. For some other customers, it is a higher level consulting engagement that they do where they're able to generate fees. And what we want to show you today is a little bit about how you can construct this concept of the Office of vCIO to really support your account management and customer engagement requirements and leverage other members from your team who may have capacity to really help keep this traction on this process long term and really help you build out a process that really keeps your customer happy and hopefully brings you back revenue on a regular basis as you work those roadmaps. So that's really what the focus is going to be today. And we're going to kick things off with talking a little bit about one of the common challenges that is hitting the vCIO or the MSP industry as a whole. One is, I think all of you are aware that hiring is challenging these days. Finding really good resources out in the marketplace has been more difficult over the last, couple of years, really, at this point. And it's been a little bit more costly than we've expected in some cases, depending on what region of the country or what country you reside in. The real reality is a lot of companies are looking for this unicorn that's out there, that person that understands both tech and business and really can communicate well and communicate to that small to mid-sized business owner. The vCIO role, while partly technical, really the art form in it is engaging with a customer that isn't tech savvy and being able to help them really identify how their roadmap is improving their business position and their outcomes and how they're going to get there and what the budget's going to look like to get there. So one of the things that we're going to introduce today as a result of that vCIO challenge is how to potentially leverage a team approach to this process, making sure whoever is in that vCIO seat, they have more time to spend with their customer. Really one of the challenges I see oftentimes with customers that come into vCIO Toolbox is everybody's very gung-ho when they first get started. They want to jump into this QBR thing and they go out and do their first round of QBRs. And they get great response. They start selling some projects quickly, but then the foot comes off the pedal a little bit, and there's a little bit of a struggle to keep that momentum. And that's because the person in the vCIO role now, after they've gone and seen their customers the first time, is starting to have to handle the customer engagement and some of the customer support. I'm not talking tech support, but more the needs support that's coming in from those customers. And then it becomes a little bit more difficult to stay consistent with preparing those reports and staying on schedule. So we really want to make sure that we provide that vCIO with some of the resources they require, and that can come from other roles within our organization without a heavy lift or big change in their existing job responsibilities. This will, if done right, will lead you to having more QBRs or more TBRs, really is the better way to say it, and customer engagement consistency, right? Generally, when we get into trouble with the customer, it's less about what happened, but more about their feelings and perceptions about how engaged we've been with them. And then one of the other things is that, sometimes we need to get some C-level support, and not all organizations are willing to provide that C-level support in the QBR structure. And that's something that we need to take heed about as well. So what is the Office of vCIO at its core? It's kind of really modeled after for those of you that have been in the corporate life, you may be aware of the Office of CIO concept that you might find in many larger scale organizations. These offices of the CIO are usually tasked with bringing the projects and the innovations to life within the IT organization. And it really consists of a lot of program managers and project managers who are guiding those initiatives and then working with the tactical teams to deliver. So really, those program managers and project managers become that liaison between the line of business and the managers that exist there. And then, of course, their internal team that's going to then deliver on, the business requirements that are presented to them. So we're kind of borrowing off of that concept to build a team approach to the advisory process here. And part of the reason we do this too is we also want to have more people from our team engaged with our key accounts that we operate. I know, at least during my 17 years as in the MSP space, one of the biggest challenges I would hear from my customers when they had one person that was really responsible for their account, and that person transitioned out of our organization. We'd bring somebody else in, and because that original person had most of the knowledge between their two ears, there was kind of a training process that had to occur for the new resource. And I even had a couple of customers, which is kind of what led us to building out a better process, say to us, look, we love you guys, we love the work you do, but it feels like every time there's a transition at the account manager or sales layer, we have to retrain the new resource. We have to, meaning the customer, have to give them the information they need to really satisfy us. So we want to build a little bit more of a team approach where there's other people in key seats that might have a little bit of better insight into the client as well. So if there is transition, they can kind of pick up the slack and then train your new internal resource as we go over, as we get engaged. Finally, one of the things that the Office of vCIO does, if we do it done correctly and you get these processes down and in the right seats, it allows you to really open up the door to new revenue opportunities. The term vCIO for me, one of the things I noticed when it became synonymous with QBR is that's really what it became known for. Hey, we're doing vCIO so we can get our QBRs done. And QBRs are things that most of us included in our contracts to show that extra value, to try to build that leadership layer in. But now we do everything under that, guys. Things that should be project-based, things that should be outside, outside the scope of the QBR effort and really be a true fractional vCIO. Or now we're seeing a lot of fractional vCISO opportunities coming into play as more and more regulation trickles down to various states and various companies. And obviously getting cyber liability hasn't been as easy as it once was. And our customers are getting more educated too, that they really need to build a security program, manage policies, and track compliance to be, to be ready to go when it's time to either answer the bell for a project or to get that cyber liability insurance. And if we're doing those things with a customer, it shouldn't be for free. We really need to look at building out some fractional vCIO and vCISO programs within our organization. So the Office of vCIO model consists of 5 different roles. But what I want to be clear here is that doesn't necessarily mean 5 different people. It depends on how your organization operates. And some of these roles can be overlapping roles. At the top there, you see the vCIO, and that's the person that's really going to be the lead for the account. They're going to be the quarterback that makes sure that the customer's happy. They're going to be the advocate that comes back on the customer's behalf into our organization to share different information. And they're really here to help drive oversight of the programs and facilitate the budgets with the customers so they can get a clear view at those roadmaps and understand what's upcoming. The engineers and techs should be engaged to help with the stack alignment and identifying where gaps live in process, system security, and maybe even training. And that engineer really can help with the technical specifics in support of the vCIO. Now, even if your customer is not supporting, are subscribing to true security services with you, there's kind of a market understanding or a market thought process that the vCIO is also my vCISO, or more importantly, hey, my MSP is responsible for everything that's connected to a wire, both operations and security. And we know that isn't the fact, right? And we may be responsible for some of that security, but some of it owns to the customer themselves. So we want to make sure that we've got at least the vCISO and analyst role covered in the office of vCIO. Now, that could be your vCIO who is responsible for security as well. It could be somebody from your security team playing the role of that analyst here. Really, that depends on your staffing makeup. If possible, it's good to have the vCIO and vCISO roles be separate resources, because it also puts a little division of church and state between the customer advocate and the one that's analyzing what's going on within these security stacks. Customer success manager. I know a lot of the MSPs I'm working with have really created this CSM position, really working to kind of be that cheerleader, if you will, for the customer. The customer success manager is really responsible for collecting customer feedback and analyzing that feedback, for supporting the vCIO when they go out there into the marketplace, and really making sure they're keeping a pulse of that customer relationship. And then finally, there needs to be executive support in this model too. There needs to be an executive who's in place that can be the primary buck stops here escalation point, and be that C-level relationship in the building. So if things go a little bit sideways with our customers, the vCIO is taking some of the heat, but if it gets to that point where they want to go see senior executives, or senior executives get involved, they know they might have that owner-to-owner relationship to work on as well. So this really is kind of the foundation of the Office of vCIO model. It's what we've put together to really assist in better understanding, how to approach the marketplace and how to make sure all those soft services that sit atop what we do from a support and delivery team can be addressed with our customers. So, when we say why the Office of vCIO, there's a couple of big reasons, and most of them you all already understand. We obviously want to stay closer to our customers. We want to stay engaged with your best clients. I see on the list of folks joining today, a lot of folks are customers of vCIO Toolbox, so there's no way you haven't heard this from me before. But we want to avoid the curse of the great MSP, which is the more we automate and the more we do remotely, the less we tend to be on site and the less things tend to break. And when that happens, if we're not positioned right within the organization, we often find ourselves on the outside looking in when it comes to, our contracts. All of a sudden, our senior members who aren't connected to IT start wondering, why are we paying so much? We never see these guys anymore. Things aren't breaking the way they once did. So we want to make sure we're staying close to our customer in a positive manner, and in a more proactive manner, to make sure that we don't fall victim to the curse of the great MSP. We want to elevate our visibility, the visibility into gaps in process systems and training. You guys all know the fact that human security is often considered the biggest security threat out in the marketplace, and our people are the biggest problem, right? So we want to understand where those gaps are, especially around policy and training, so we can then make sure that we're putting in the resources to help support that, making sure that somebody doesn't just make a very human mistake that leads to a big security crisis or a big operational crisis for the customer. And then, of course, part of the value add of what we can do when your vCIO has a little bit more proactive time available is really help the customer stay in front of threats and innovation. Customer success managers and vCIOs that I see paired up together really do a good job, because what they're doing at that point in time is they're making sure that they're working closely with those customers, that they're getting feedback, that they're staying engaged, that they're sending out industry information where applicable to their customers, and really making sure that they're never really far from the customer's mind in the day-to-day. So it starts with who should be the vCIO. And, most commonly, the starting point for vCIO would be the owner of the organization. Who is that person that, operates the organization? And they should be the person, since they're also the ones that have the most experience at the business level at this stage, that are doing those vCIO services as you're getting started within your organization. As it starts growing, you need to then look at your team and see who would be the right person for vCIO. Now, commonly out in the marketplace, depending on the philosophy of many of the MSPs and MSSPs I work with, they'll look at their account management team, their technical account managers, and certain engineers, and really say, who are the right ones to be a vCIO? Account managers, you want to make sure they're not pure salespeople and they understand, at least at a high level, how all the architecture connects and can kind of visualize the technology a little bit as well. Most account managers are good at speaking a little bit towards the business side of life, but we need to make sure that they have enough technical chops and competence that they don't have to run to the account managers each and every time. The engineers each and every time they have a question. Technical account managers are really good in this role. The thing you want to make sure, though, is your technical account managers get exposed to business. A lot of TAMs I work with have never done any strategic planning with the customer. Think of goals as the projects themselves and not the problems those projects are trying to solve. So you want to make sure that somebody that's in the role that's coming out of your technical account management team has an understanding, or you're able to train them on an understanding of kind of the big picture. And that kind of goes the same for the right kind of engineer. A lot of engineers like to come out and, obviously engineers are engineers, right? They love the technology and they really value the technology, but they need to sometimes when they're talking to a customer, instead of really just telling what time it is, they'll tell you how the watch was built, right? That old saying. So we want to make sure that you've got an engineer that's got good interpersonal skills that can relate to a customer. And while they might get weedy from time to time, they're not going to jump in the weeds for every single project. So that's a little bit about kind of the profile for the vCIO. Some of the personality traits that a vCIO has to have to be successful in this position is confidence. Your vCIO is talking to C-level professionals in that organization. They can't be intimidated by that position. If they think that the CEO is a special person and they walk on water, then they're going to have a tough time challenging that CEO when there's something that you need to get done. If there's a security project that's really going to protect them from a big vulnerability, but the CEO is not seeing it, they got to be, convincing in that role. And I would look at it this way, owners. If you wouldn't invite them into your own boardroom, why would you expect to bring them into anybody else's boardroom? Some other skills that they should have is some empathy, being able to listen and understand what the customer's saying. They need to be an advocate. They need to have the strength to sometimes conflict with or have conflict with folks on their own team when they're speaking on behalf for the betterment of the client. The client's got a problem that's been outstanding for a while and they start to escalate it. You might have people whose feathers get ruffled on your own team along the way, but they need to do that. We've already kind of touched upon the fact that they need to have this basic business acumen, and how things are driven in a business and why tech is going to support it. And they need to be able to speak both languages, both business and tech. So that's really kind of the personality traits and who should be the vCIO. Some of the responsibilities of the vCIO is really staying engaged with their customer, being the quarterback, running those regular reviews, doing periodic check-ins, and getting resources from the team when required. They need to really understand the initiatives the customer's undertaking. They got to drive action. They got to keep the customer on schedule too. Don't let those customers tell you, hey, that's a great project. Yeah, we'll do it in June. And then in June tell you, oh, can we push that to September? We're really busy. And then September comes around and you do that QBR and they go, can we do it at the end of the year? At some point, they got to look at them and go, no, we need to do it now because this is the vulnerabilities or threats you're facing. They need to be an educator as well. They need to make sure that their customers are learning things they need to, things like big changes that occur. We recently went through the big Microsoft 365 price increase. I'm sure none of us wanted that to go without our customers having an understanding, so the blame didn't fall back to us, right? And then they've got to monitor that relationship as well. So as you can see, the vCIO responsibility, while it's at its core is kind of a farmer and continue to cultivate revenue through the account management process, there's a lot of different hats they can wear with the customer. And that's why sometimes it's good to share some of the responsibilities. One of the easiest one to share is the responsibilities to the engineer. Basically, they can conduct the assessments, support the assessments with the introduction of our new how-to system within vCIO Toolbox, where you can create very easy how-tos linked to standard operating procedures, even videos to guide your resources. You can really start putting this to some of your lower cost professionals, maybe even your help desk, that when they have downtime, they could be helping prepare some of the QBRs and answering some of the questions that are found in there. The engineer needs to make sure that we're being contract compliant. Are we doing the tasks that we cover under contract? Are we really testing restores? Are we doing periodic backups? All those kind of things. We need to bring big issues to the management teams, right? If there is something that's escalating or becoming a problem, or we're catching wind through our service teams that there's people in our account not happy, well, the vCIO, you need to bring that to your vCIO as an engineer so they can check in with the account, and then the vCIO would have to bring it uphill if that's the case. They've got to look at where non-standard and non-compliance in the stack exists and make sure that's communicated. And then look for those trends within a client as they look at those reports. If they're seeing certain things happen, a server reboots every other day, things like that, they need to be a part of that conversation. Part of the reason we want to get our engineers engaged as well is this can be a career stepping stone for a lot of our engineers. If they get engaged in the QBR process early and become more comfortable with what it does, it may help them choose the career path they want to follow. As most of you know, most engineers ultimately have that crossroad moment where they have to choose a path. Do they want to stay as an individual contributor and continue working on tech? Or do they want to take a more leadership role, which usually means a little less hands-on tech, a little bit more on the business side? If they succeed in this role of supporting the vCIO, it could give them an opportunity to choose that path and go down the leadership route if they'd like to. And, if we don't, and then think about one of the biggest challenges we have as MSPs, we're losing some of our staff from time to time because they're getting offered $5,000 elsewhere, $10,000 elsewhere. And part of that is because they don't have the perception of actually having a career path in your organization. So by showing them and sitting down with them in their one-on-ones or in their annual reviews and showing them, hey, if you get more involved with the QBR process and that work you're doing around the assessment isn't just grunt work, it's going to give you an opportunity to see how that process works. And when you get to that crossroad moment where you got to decide, do you want to be more technical or leadership, you can follow that path, and you could probably follow that path here. So it really becomes a retention strategy as well with our existing employees. Now, why do we have a need for the vCISO in this process? Well, the industry has definitely shifted to a security-first focus, right? We know break fix is down to almost nothing for most organizations. We saw a big trajectory to the cloud migrations happening during the COVID period. And now that we've got all this, this technology in various places, security has never been more of a concern and more on the mind of our business owners than it has been or than it is right now. So we need to have that vCISO resource, somebody that's actually on our team, just at least staying in tune with what's happening out in the marketplace, knowing what those issues might be. If you're not part of an ISAO, an information sharing organization, I strongly suggest getting involved there. For those of you that are CompTIA members, I think that their ISAO is included at no additional charge for the MSPs. So you want to make sure that you're getting that information and synthesizing that information every day. Something that you pure play MSPs might want to look at is, I have a number of MSSPs that have told me that they've had to add traditional MSP services to their stack just because their customers engaged them from a security standpoint, felt so comfortable with them that they said, can you just manage our day-to-day too? And we know you might not be as good as what we have today, but we want it all under your bucket. So, if it's starting to shift the sales process, and if you're not preparing yourself to be in that conversation and have somebody that can lead that conversation might pass you by. It's also creating an emerging area of MSPs, as there is really a calling for things like compliance as a service or vCISO as a service in the marketplace, where they need that resource that can really coach and govern them, build policy, and do some of the things, analyze architecture, and really do it. And another thing that's really been coming up from a lot of the customers that have been doing security with me in our GRC module is it's opening up more co-managed opportunities, where these folks get to go in and just be responsible for the security services. The day-to-day operation stays with the customer, and they're making higher margin, higher value, and getting and really valued higher just because of the role that they're holding within the organization as well. So, if you've been contemplating a vCISO, hopefully this gives you a little insight into where, you might be able to leverage one. The role itself is they need to be the information source and drive policy. Too many SMBs today don't think the process is going to happen to them. But the reality is a lot of them are falling victim to non-targeted attacks. Simply, their ports are being scanned. That port gets found open. They're dropping a packet in and see what happens, right? So we need to really help them understand that, they're not being targeted. That's true, but they are susceptible to the bots that are out in the marketplace, and this can cause disruption for them. They need to be educated. They generally don't understand the threats they have, especially when it comes down to internal teams, right? So they really need somebody that can keep them in front of threat actors. If you have a vCISO, I would have them hold office hours like I'm doing each week and just make it a session of, hey, here's what's going on in the industry as it relates to security, and let your customers start attending that. It's a great way to stay engaged in a one-to-many format and bring them information in real time. And then we talked about this earlier. They already expect you to be the vCISO. They're assuming you're doing the security already. So take this as an opportunity to show them what's in the contract, what's not in contract, and hopefully use it as a way to expand the contract as well. When we talk a little bit about the customer success manager role, this could be baked into the vCIO depending on the size and scope of your organization, but we're definitely seeing more and more people starting to employ a customer success manager. They really need to keep in tune with the state of the relationship. They need to be doing those periodic pop-in calls, monthly, just making sure that the customer's got nothing open. They might be sharing different reports with the customer on a monthly basis. They may be driving some of the surveys so you can get your NPS statuses on clients as well. But they really need to kind of be the person that's the glue and kind of holding the relationship together and making sure on a more day-to-day basis that engagement occurs. Another thing that they need to be doing is keeping relevant information in front of the customer. These folks work closely oftentimes with marketing teams to make sure that the right messaging and the right information is being shared with the client base. And they usually are managers of the contact calendar and key accounts as well. I've got a number of my customers that have their CSMs really managing the calendar and making sure the meetings are scheduled for the vCIO and staying on point with the service teams acting in as that resource when the vCIO is out meeting with customers to make sure that assessments are getting prepared and things are getting ready for that meeting date. Again, in smaller organizations, a lot of the CSM role belongs to the vCIO. But if you start getting larger and you've got a vCIO that's responsible for 40, 50 clients, you're going to need the CSM resource to really help support them and make sure the work gets done appropriately. And then finally, the executive role. This is where the buck needs to stop in your organization. There has to be somebody, and you can empower the vCIO with this to a point, but somebody that has to be able to make the decision when there's a problem that might cost your organization money and give the green light or go ahead if that's going to satisfy the customer's need. There needs to be an escalation point from this team so the customer doesn't feel like they're stuck in middle management or stuck at a point where they can't push. And honestly, with your key accounts especially, your executives should be going out periodically for face-to-face meetings with those key clients. In between my time in MSP and launching vCIO Toolbox, I worked big corporate. I was a VP over at United Healthcare. And our CEO would go out in January and meet on a daily basis with the top 30 customers that contributed the most, let's call it 40% of the revenues to the organization, and just listen and find out what was going on within their companies. Then they would come back to us and tell us how to fix it, right? But the point being is, if you're not doing some of those executive to executive touches, you're missing a huge opportunity to A, build relationship, B, understand from peers who are experiencing some of those same problems you may be experiencing as a small business owner, just in a different sector, on how they tackled those things. And then ultimately, you might miss out on new innovation and opportunity that these folks are looking at that they don't think of our organization about. So, I strongly suggest, when you get to that point where you can pass the baton on the vCIO role as the owner, you're not stepping away from the customer in the process. I see that happen too often. So guys, that's today's coaching session. I know we're right up against our time here. I do want to open up the floor, and I do have some extra time for anybody that wants to stay on for Q&A, questions and answers. While I'm looking for any Q&A or questions and answers or chat to jump into the screen, I do want to tell you, again, you're new joining us for the first time today. We do these sessions every Tuesday. They're not just about vCIO Toolbox, just like this. It's about, a process, a program. And, occasionally, obviously we do some deep dive trainings as well. Love to have you join us. If you have anything you would like to see us cover as a training, I'm always looking for new ideas, guys. So if you got anything you'd like me to cover, anything that you feel is something that you're struggling with in the platform, just email me at bdoyle@vciotoolbox.com, and I'll be happy to get that into our rotation as well. As many of you know, these recordings ultimately get pushed up into the university. I usually say within about 24 or 48 hours, but sometimes depending on workload, I can be the thorn in the side of things as this video gets loaded to my local. Sometimes it could take a week, but we do our best to get those up there as quickly as possible so people can watch the replays. If you are new to vCIO Toolbox and this is one of your first experiences, I hope you have the opportunity to take a demo with us at some point and see what we're all about. And for those of you that are with us already, and I see plenty of you on the call, thank you as always as being as part of the community. I'm not seeing any questions and answers, so I'm going to let you guys go and get back to your day. But I want to thank you all for joining me again today. Derek, great to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. And, love to catch up with any of you that would like to catch up over the next couple of months as well. Let's set up some QBRs, man. All right, let's talk. Take care, Rob. Appreciate it.